Once upon a time there was a vineyard owner, desperate to get his crops of grapes harvested. Maybe the weather is threatening to turn bad the next day, or maybe the grapes are so bursting with juice that if they aren't picked today, they will go rotten quickly. Whatever the situation, the work needs to be done in a day. So at the crack of dawn, he finds some eager folks lined up. So also here at the first light, the farmer goes out and finds these go-getters, these early bird gets the worm types straining to get to work. So he hires them, promising a denarius for their trouble. These people work literally from sun up to sundown, a solid 12 hours of labor, including right through the heat of the day. Apparently, however, despite the diligent work of these folks, the picking is not proceeding fast enough to satisfy the farmer. So all day long, at 9 a.m., noon, 3 p.m., and even as late as 5 p.m., a scant hour before quitting time, the farmer keeps hiring folks, handing them empty bushel baskets and telling them to fill them up with grapes. Jesus purposely lingers a bit over the last folks who are hired. These were not the eager beavers who had been standing at the farmer's front gate at dawn. For whatever reason, they had slept in. Maybe they were ne'er-do-wells of the community, the kind of people who were unemployed but seemed to lack gumption to do a whole lot about it. All day they sat around on the fringes of the town square, sipping cheap beer maybe, and just watching passively as over and over the farmer came looking for new workers. But they had not leapt to their feet each time he came to the square, calling for more pickers. Finally, it got to the point where there were no other folks left in the square. These lollygaggers were getting ready to head home to sit on the sofa and channel surf the evening away. The farmer comes back one last time. "Why have you guys been lazing around the town square all day doing nothing?" the farmer asks. "We don't know," they say. "I guess it's 'cause no one hired us." Well, there was a reason for that too, of course, but when the farmer tells them to get to work at last, they readily agree. Heck, for an hour they could put up with almost anything. A little hard work never hurt anybody, the old adage goes, and a little hard work was precisely what these fellows were going to get. Jesus is setting us up here. We already are looking at these guys through squinty eyes. Examples of the Protestant work ethic, they are not. But then Jesus pulls a fast one. He makes sure that these 1-hour pickers get paid first. Had they been last, after the crack of dawn, folks had already left with their hard-earned denarius tucked into their wallets, there would not have been much of a punch to this parable. But instead, Jesus' fictional farmer makes a point of ensuring that the people who worked the longest witnessed the fact that these lazy guys got paid 1 whole denarius, the same as they did. Of course, this was not the moment that brought about the anger, was it? Being fair-minded with a firm sense of right and wrong, and of what they had coming to them, they assumed that maybe, as it turned out, the going rate for this vineyard was 1 denarius per hour. And oh, what a happy evening it would be in their households if they could come home with 12 denarii in their pocket. How wonderful it would be to swing by the mall on the way home and to be able to afford one of those better brands of wine to go with dinner, maybe some flowers for their wife. Except in this story, it didn't happen that way at all. Everyone got paid the same. You know, just about everyone I know, starting with myself, has a certain expression, a certain look that involuntarily sweeps across the face the moment you feel cheated. It's kind of a pursed lips, sidelong glance, head-shaking expression, utterly transparent to the anger that is rising in your throat. That's how I picture these 12-hour workers the moment the master's payroll man plopped a single denarius into their sweaty palms. They stare at the coin in disbelief and then look for more. One of them finally asks, "Can you even believe this?" The master overhears their grumbling and reminds them that he hasn't cheated anyone. This was the contract that they agreed to at the dawn of day. And as for the rest, he goes on, "What's that to you? You're not out anything. I can do what I want with my own money. Are you to begrudge my generosity?" Life isn't fair sometimes. It's like what sometimes happens in families, between siblings. It is like a man who cares for his elderly mother, taking her into his own home when she becomes too frail to live by herself. And although he has 3 brothers and sisters, he rarely hears from them. They call from time to time to tell him how grateful they are, but none of them offer any real help. They have problems of their own, his mother tells him. "I thank God for you." Then she dies, and suddenly the whole family appears, grieving as if they had been there all along. At the lawyer's office, they are all ears. The man who has spent most of his life savings caring for his mother sits and listens with his head in his hands as the will is read. "I leave my estate to be divided equally among my children," it reads, "because I love them all the same." It's not fair. Life is not fair, which is why it seems all that much more important that God should be. God should be the one authority whom you can count on to reward people according to their efforts, the one who keeps track of how long you've worked and how hard you have worked. God should be the one manager who polices the line, walking up and down to make sure everyone stays where he or she belongs. Life may not be fair, but God should be. Did I ever tell you about the summer I worked for College Pro Painters? It was my 2nd year of university, and I was desperate for a job, and it was well known that College Pro Painters would hire almost anyone. A word about the name of the outfit, College Pro Painters. It is at least 50% misleading. Most of their employees were college, it is true, but to suggest that we were pro painters or professional strains all credulity. The way it worked was the manager would bid on a job. He would give a cost estimate based on the number of man-hours it would take to paint the house, plus materials. Maybe $7 an hour. I don't remember. Now, if the crew finished the job on time, that is what we received, $7 an hour. If we worked really hard and efficiently, then our hourly wage went up. If we goofed off or spilled the paint, then our hourly wage went down, because there was only so much money in a project. That summer I was part of an 8-man crew, and we never came in under budget. Now I was, of course, an excellent house painter. No, that's not true. I was good. Well, not really. The truth is, I at least worked hard at it. But at least half of our crew were a bad combination of incompetent and lazy. They didn't care about the budget or our diminishing hourly rate. They showed up late, they took long lunches, they made mistakes, they spilled the paint. All the while, the rest of us worked away and grumbled to ourselves and to each other, "This is not fair." The parable of the vineyard is a troubling story for those of us who believe in fairness and following the rules. It is a troubling story for a guy like me, who waits patiently in the express checkout at the no-frills store. 15 items or less, the sign says, and the lady in front of me has 27 items in her cart. And she looks at me as if to say, "Is this okay?" And I look back at her as if to say, "I'm in no hurry. You just go ahead. Break the rules." But it is a slippery slope. This wanton lawlessness may lead to anarchy in the streets. It is a troubling story to those of us who have served in the church for years, served on the board of managers, given generously of our time and resources, suffered through some really long and boring sermons on hot July Sundays. It is hard for us to believe that God loves everyone the same. It's hard to believe that if I work a little harder than everyone else, I won't get a little extra attention. God will say, "Attaboy," or brag about me like Job, "Have you considered my servant Rob?" And yet, the question that the parable asks is the same one the vineyard owner asked the 12-hour workers. Are you going to begrudge my generosity? Maybe we need to know that this is not a story about getting your fair share. There is fairness, and there is generosity. In the morning, the small group of students approached their teacher, who was tending a fire, and one of the students spoke for the group. "We have learned many things from you. In our discussions, we have risen to the highest possible level. Now we wish to encounter God. Can you help us?" The teacher smiled and invited them to sit at the table and face each other. "Let us have a cup of tea together," he said. Once they were all seated, the teacher began to pour tea into their cups. He filled them all, and then he kept pouring in each cup until the tea was running all over the table and onto the ground. The students watched dumbfounded at the teacher's outrageous actions until the most eager could no longer restrain himself. "Stop," he said. "It's full. That's enough. The cups will not hold any more tea." Placing the teapot on the table, the teacher looked intently and lovingly into each of their faces, then gently said, "The Maker of heaven and earth is filling you abundantly, more than you can ever think or ask."